I feel bad for really smart black people. It has to be exhausting to just constantly be accused of betraying your community because you understand anything. I mean, I've seen people say Clarence Thomas would vote slavery back in. You understand that what he's doing is arguing that the point of the original 14th Amendment was particularly to naturalize African American slaves. And it also should require some sense of loyalty and like allegiance to American identity, which is actually a much more pro-black position than just saying anybody's equally an American when they step foot onto this soil and eject a baby. Corporations in this country want the 14th to stay the way it's interpreted right now because birthright citizenship will allow them to turn this country into a strip mall. We have black excellence rearing its head, really, fighting it with 150 IQ and very refined legal thinking. And the problem is but it's like too white coded. It's like white adjacent. He's like upholding the system, man. We all got to get together to overthrow the system.
So today you see we reacting to this video where this, white guy says he feels bad for really smart black people because they're constantly being betrayed by people in our own community like Clarence Thomas. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think this whole conversation starts in the wrong place because somewhere along the way, we've gotten into the habit of letting one person speak for millions of people. I don't care if it's Clarence Thomas. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. I don't care if it's Candace Owens. I don't care if it's Al Sharpton. One person does not represent an entire community, man. We got to stop that. That's the first mistake people make. Now let's talk about Clarence Thomas because people throw his name around all the time without even knowing what he actually said. So Justice Thomas has argued that the 14th Amendment was originally written to guarantee citizenship and equal rights for formerly enslaved black Americans after the Civil War. He was also argued that citizenship carries without an allegiance to the United States and that the amendment has been interpreted too broadly in some modern immigration cases. Now, whether you agree with him or not, that's the argument he's making. He's not saying black people shouldn't have rights. He's arguing about how the 14th Amendment should be interpreted, basically, right? That's an important distinction if we're going to have an honest conversation. Now, do I agree with everything Clarence Thomas says? Absolutely not. But here's where I think this video misses the mark. Why are we acting like one Supreme Court justice determines the value of every intelligent black person in America? Since when did one man's opinion become everybody's identity? That's giving a human being way too much power. Let me tell you something. Clarence Thomas is a man. That's it. He puts his shoes on one foot at a time, just like everybody else. He has influence, yes. He has a powerful position, yes. But he doesn't get the final say over my identity, your identity, or the future of black America. God gets the final say. That's where I separate myself from this conversation. See, this is what politics does. Politics convinces you that one politician, one judge, one president, or one election controls your destiny. As a Christian, I don't believe that. I believe governments rise and governments fall. But God remains the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I've said that many times in videos. That's where my confidence comes from. Psalms 118:8 says it is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. Read that again. Better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. We spend way too much time arguing over people who we will never meet, while ignoring the God who created us. Here's another thing that bothered me about this video. Why is intelligence being measured by whether somebody agrees with Clarence Thomas? That's not intelligence. Intelligence is being able to think critically for yourself. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with Clarence Thomas, but at least you know the facts before you start repeating what somebody on social media told you. Too many people today don't read opinions. They read headlines. They don't study history. They study hashtags. And then they wonder why everybody's so divided. Proverbs 18:13 says, he who answers a matter before he hears it, it is a folly and shame to him. In other words, stop making up your mind before you've actually done the homework. Do the homework first. Here's my message. Stop letting politics become your God. Stop letting public figures define your identity. Your identity shouldn't be found in Clarence Thomas, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or any politician walking on this earth. Your identity should be found in Jesus Christ. Men will disappoint you. Judges will disappoint you. Presidents will disappoint you. But God never changes. So instead of worrying about whether one man betrayed an entire community, I'd rather ask a different question. Are we becoming the men and women God has called us to be? Because that's the conversation that actually changes lives. God bless you. It's your boy Paul P, and I'll catch you on the next one. Doses.